You never know where somebody's from. You never know where they're going, and you never know where you'll meet up with them again. So make a friend out of everyone, boy. That's what I would hear all the time from my pops. Well, I looked down and I saw a watch on Glenn's wrist. He was sitting in the chair. This was back in the Mandalay Bay time, probably 1999. And as I saw the watch, I just complimented. Oh man, that's an amazing, amazing watch. And Glenn looked up at me and he said, "Thank you so much." And we just continued on. Well, earlier that day, I had taken out the VIP procedure in booking appointments, because when we first started, we used to use an old appointment book that you would write on. We didn't even use a computer at the time. But we would do that, and next to a person, if they were a VIP, if they worked at the hotel at the Mandalay Bay where the location was at, they would write down VIP next to it, or they'd write down something. And I walked up to the front, and I remember looking at it, and my parents had taught me, never be a respecter of persons. And it wasn't to not respect people, but it was to not respect a position. It was to give love and honor to every single person. And so I looked down and I saw VIP on the schedule, and I said, "Hey guys, today we are going to take away the VIP status of every single person, because everybody deserves to be treated like a VIP, and you never know who you're dealing with. You never know where they're from. You never know where they're going, and you never know where you'll meet up with them again. So make a friend out of everyone." That's what I was thinking in my head. Well, when Glenn sat down, he didn't have a VIP next to him because we weren't allowed to anymore. I complimented him on his watch. He told me that the reason why he was wearing it is because he was in Germany, and there was a train station that he would frequent. And at that train station, they had a clock there, and the brand of the clock was the brand of the watch. And we started talking about that, and it was very interesting. And then I found out that he was a fan of boxing, and I found out that he was, into MMA and all these different realms. And we talked about family, we talked about travel, we talked about watches, we talked about boxing. We didn't talk about anything that he did, but this relationship over the next couple of months and over the next couple of years would become one of the most pivotal and foundational relationships in my entire life and in my entire career. And what was amazing is because in Proverbs 4, it reminds us that everything in life is either building us or tearing us down. The house that we build and that we're building for the future is built inch stone by inch stone. And it gives us some things to be conscious of and to be aware of. Because a lot of times we don't realize that the things that we're doing today are building the foundation for the things that are coming tomorrow. And my relationship with Glenn, although I had no idea, was doing just that. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got two shines, so every day I climb. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Imagine that. Imagine not understanding how the impact of somebody or something that's in your life right now, because a lot of times we go through the day and we almost do it. We do it out of routine. We do it out of ritual, and not being exactly present where we're at, and realizing that presence where we're at can bring the presence in the future. And this happened with Glenn because I sat down with him, and as I started to talk to him, It was incredible because he not only loved watches, he loved boxing. We chatted. Little did I know later on, this man was gonna literally change my life and give me unfair advantages. But little did I know too that most of the time, people had treated him based off of what he did as opposed to who he was. And when we talked about watches, we talked about boxing, we talked about family, we talked about travel. And literally over the course of probably, 5, 6 years, we formed a relationship where I think that Glenn felt a little safe. He felt a little safe because he wasn't judged or treated based off of what he did. Is he got to just be Glenn. And it was just an amazing experience when I was there at the Mandalay Bay. And when I was looking at Proverbs 14 today, it talked about like a wise person builds their house and a foolish person tears theirs down. And it doesn't mean that we don't sometimes tear something down. That's what I was looking at. And I was, wrestling with, and I was like, well, sometimes you tear something down, right, to be able to build something better. Well, you're tearing it down with the intent of building something better. But what it says in this is a wise person will build their house, becoming conscious of the little Inchstones, the little tiny things that they put in place that will eventually become the milestones down the road. And so for me, I didn't know this. I wasn't really, I wasn't conscious of it in the fact of like, oh, I'm going to be nice to this person so I get something. No, this was just principles that my parents had taught me very early. Now, I thought these were natural and normal, and I thought that everybody had them in their life. But what I want to encourage you with is, I thought that every day, because I heard this from my parents every single day, is, my mom told me I was awesome, I was beautiful, I could do anything that I put my mind to. And I thought that everyone heard that. I thought that everyone heard, and my pops would say to me, you're the greatest son, so act accordingly. I thought everybody had heard that. But what I didn't realize is that that's not a common thing. And my parents were building me up at this time. But they were building me up because they knew that they weren't going to be around for as long as, they were going to be gone from my life longer than they were actually in it. So as I looked at Proverbs 14, these principles that my parents gave me, they were foundational, but it just put some muscle memory. So it wasn't, again, that when I sat down with Glenn, I was thinking, oh man, in the future, he's going to help me out, so I'll help him now. It was just, this was the right thing to do. Why? Because of what was imparted in my heart. So think of this in your heart or your heart set. This is the construction of the whole vibe. Like, the construction of your heart set, which is your belief system, is what you hear, what you see, and what you become aware of through your senses from people who you value, right? Your mindset is based off of what you see, what you hear, what you become aware of through your senses from people who you choose to allow to speak into your life or be around your life. Your actions, right, or your skill set is just your actions, the things that you put into play. And whatever's in your heart, generally, when it overflows, will come out your mouth, and what you speak about your hands will move to, and your feet will move to, right? So once we align those things, when you align the belief system that you have, you align the mindset that you have, and you align the skill set that you have. When those happen, it creates an irresistible vibe, but just be conscious, because you got to be careful of what goes into your heart in the first place. And that's the reason why we study wisdom, over 3,000-year-old proven wisdom. So in Proverbs 14, when I was looking at it, a wise person builds their house, or wisdom builds, and foolishness tears down. Foolishness is just the absence of wisdom. Wisdom is the right use of knowledge. And where can we find it? Through the fear of God, and that's just the respect of God. And this was mentioned in a bunch of verses in Proverbs 14, which is verse 1, 32, 33, and 35. And so whenever I see something mentioned a bunch of times, what I realize is that it's pretty important, and we want to perk up to it. In verse 2, 16, 19, 22, 26, and 27, wherever your respect goes, your feet will follow. And this one was hard for me, because it was almost a little convicting, because I had to look at it and say, okay, well, where's my feet? Where's my actions? Where's my actions going? Where am I what places am I putting myself in? Well, sometimes I'm putting myself in some pretty crazy places, places that maybe shouldn't be. And when I looked at it, it based off of wherever my respect goes, your feet will follow. You'll move towards those things. And my brother, I was talking with him the other day, and you know, when I watch him, his his feet only go to where he respects. So what he respects with his time, he's huge on his family. Um, and I find that everything is wrapped around that. So wherever he respects, his feet will follow. Um, verse 3 and 5, your words will build or tear down. And since they are the overflow of your heart, guard your heart at all costs. Your words build or tear down. So what I would suggest today, I just got a chance to speak to my cousin Marcy, and I talked to her yesterday on the phone, and it's just like she lit up my whole entire day. And it was awesome because, growing up, she was always a light to me. She was always somebody who was laughing. She has a very witty, sarcastic personality, and doesn't take things super serious. And we had a conversation yesterday, and we just laughed and laughed and laughed. And what I told her this morning is, your words built me up. Like, you spoke life to me. That's what I sent out to her. And so just be conscious, guys, is when we're looking at it, your words will build or tear people down. And if you have the opportunity today, just literally reach out to someone who you absolutely love and tell them that you love them. It can change things for them. So it's a wild thing, but speaking life, meaning using their name and something specific that they did to be able to inspire you, can change things. I promise you. In verse 4, 23 and 24, dirty work creates clean results. This is a hard one that because most of the time we want to have the magic beans, we want to have the silver bullet, we want to just do this one thing and then everything's going to be okay, and that's not the case. And what God says in this is, speaks about it, and Solomon was writing about it, is dirty work creates clean results. If you want clean results in your business, do the dirty work that needs to happen. You want clean results in your relationship, do the dirty work that needs to happen. And generally, it's the stuff that nobody sees, nobody's going to give you any credit for, but it's going to be the things that help you along the way. In verse 6 and 25, accepting truth will set you free. And I remember reading this as a kid and hearing it and saying, like, accepting truth, or the truth will set you free. Well, the truth will set you free if you accept it. And so I would be conscious of that. And verse 7, 9, 14, and 17 is, bad company spoils a good party. Now, all of us have all had a good party, and the people show up, and there was a certain group of people when we were growing up that if they showed up to the party, it was never any fun. There would turn out to be a fight. It turned out to just be, whatever. But that bad company spoils a good party. In verse 8, 15, 18, 29, and that's quite a few verses, is stop, breathe, and take thought of the future. Imagine if the next time that you had a worry in your life, that you stopped, took a breath, and you took thought of the future. Now, at that time when Glenn sat down with me and I complimented him on his watch, I could tell you that I did not stop, I did not take a breath, and I did not take thought of the future. I just thought Glenn's watch was really, really cool. He, he mentioned something about boxing. My dad was a boxer. We were raised on boxing. We started talking. Then it went into family. Then it went into, travel and all those things. But I had no idea how much Glenn would impact my life later on. Now, I can't say that, again, at 23 years old, that I was taking thought of the future, but I promise you, in now, when I'm looking at it, almost 50 years old, most of the challenges that I've got myself into, if I would stop, take a breath, and take thought of the future, I guarantee you those things would be solved. In verse 10, it was just, it was nice because it was something that Mel Robbins talks about. And it's a very simple concept, 2 words, which when I heard them, I was like, man, that is absolutely genius. And then every person on the planet thought, why didn't I think of that? And it's just let them. Just let them. If somebody's mean to you, just let them. If if you get fired, somebody fired you from your job, let them. And when that happens, it frees you because then you don't have to you don't have to force things into being. In verse 11 is inchstone by inchstone. It's just little bit by little bit. I had no idea that the relationship with Glenn would turn into what it is now and what it did for me throughout my career. In verse 12, shiny things lead to silly results. Is it a good idea or a God idea? That seems like a bumper sticker. But just always ask yourself, like, is this a good idea? Is it a God idea? And think like shiny things, things that are shiny. We just bought knives the other day and my son cut his finger because the knives were so sharp. But the knives that we bought didn't have shiny handles. They had very dull handles. You'll find that most knives that are at a high quality have a very dull handle, and the ones that are lesser in value have a shiny handle because they're trying to make up for what they don't have. In verse 21 through 28 is make friends by being a good one. In verse 30, peace brings life and envy rots the bones. We deal with this on a day-to-day basis because of the things that we see online and the challenges that that we're having in our life and the perfect life that other people are living. So they post, but just be conscious here, because peace, when you're peaceful in your life, it brings life, and that envy will rot the bones. In verse 31, no one is a VIP and everyone is a VIP. This concept for me, if you're, for me, I was in the professional beauty industry and we did this with a salon where it was contrary to most belief because we were in a hotel. And when I went to the front and I told everyone, there's no VIPs, there's no more writing down on the schedule of VIP. And people were like, well, how are we going to know if the person's important? Well, every single person that walks into this place is important. And we want to treat them that way because no one's a VIP, but everyone's a VIP. And when Glenn sat down, I was able to look at his watch as opposed to, who or what he did on a day-to-day basis. And it changed my life. In verse 34, doing right always wins in the long run. I believe that my parents taught me a principle very early on that there was no VIPs, but everyone was a VIP. Don't be a respecter of persons. You never know where someone's from. You never know where they're going. You never know where you'll meet up with them again. So make a friend out of everyone. And see, we created that policy that no client was tagged with title because my mama and pops had told me that. And I don't think that my friend Glenn had ever been treated that way. See, early in our relationship, I asked him if he had worked at the Mandalay Bay when Glenn sat down the first time. And he said yes, and then he moved on. Well, later on during the time, I was so interested. He was such a nice guy. He would come in every couple of weeks. We would sit down. We'd talk about boxing. We'd talk about travel. We'd talk about watches. We'd talk about all these things. And then one time I sat down probably 6-8 months, maybe a year into our relationship. And I was, at home, I was reading a book about Las Vegas and it was called Super Casino. And in Super Casino, it tracked the journey of going from a family-owned business, but as all the casinos, what family is from Chicago, and into being traded on the New York Stock Exchange, meaning that Wall Street had invested in Vegas and things became public. Well, they chronicled that story and they talked about how it happened, and they talked about this guy called the Miracle Man, and they referred to him as the Miracle Man because he was the one responsible for taking Vegas, the city, like all those things, taking it public, taking the casinos public. And they talked about this Miracle Man, and they were going back and forth with it. And, I didn't even really pick up on his name, but I just kept hearing the Miracle Man. And then as I went through the book, I realized I read the name of the Miracle Man, and his name happened to be Glenn. Well, when I saw Glenn, I was like, oh, wow, I have a friend named Glenn in my head because I don't have that many friends named Glenn. And then I read the last name and it said Glenn Schaefer. And I said, wow, that's the same name as the guy who comes in, and I've complimented him on his watch, on boxing, on all these things. We talked about all these things, and he's my buddy. Well, then I go back in and I sit down and I mentioned the Miracle Man, and he just kind of smiled and laughed. Well, turns out Glenn, who happened to work for the Mandalay Bay, who's the guy who just became my friend from watches and boxing and all those things, Glenn Schaefer was actually the CFO of all of Mandalay Corporation. And when I left the company, when I left the Mandalay Bay and the company, and I was going out to start on my own, I was sitting with Glenn and I said, hey, Glenn, would you happen to know any accountants? Well, this was the silliest question in the world, because this is the CFO of Mandalay Corporation's like 8 casinos. This is the guy who helped to take Vegas public, the Miracle Man. And he said, he chuckled and he said, yeah, I might know somebody. And about an hour later, I got a call from a woman named Kelly Cardenas. And Kelly Cardenas was his accountant. So the CFO of Mandalay Corporations, his accountant, calls me. And she says, hey, I want to let you know I'm on the beach in Florida, but I'm with my family, but I want you to know that everything's taken care of. You don't have to worry about anything. Well, the thing that I didn't tell her is that my company that I was starting off only had 4 employees at the time, and that one of them was me. 3 of them, the rest of the 3 or 4 that we had, were making minimum wage. I didn't need an accountant that ran the Mandalay Bay. But you know what? She came back, she sat down, she asked me my goals, what I wanted to do ultimately, and I told her where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do with the company. And she said, don't worry, we'll get it all set up. And she set us up as if we were already acting as the company that we ultimately desired. And there's no way she would have taken me on had I not had the recommendation of the Miracle Man, Mr. Glenn Schaefer. But I would have never had the connection point with Mr. Glenn Schaefer if I would have treated him as a VIP before he walked in, as opposed to connecting with him and making him feel like a human being and making him feel like a very important human being. And now as I tell the story, I'm almost embarrassed to say that I sat down with the CFO of Mandalay Corporation and I asked him, do you know of any good accountants? Well, he could have told me a bunch of different realms, but he allowed me in and he actually set me up with the greatest accountant at the time, Kelly Cardenas. She's there in Las Vegas and she helped me to be able to build our business. We ended up building, $1 million locations in 1,000 square foot with only 1,000 square foot in each location. We built those $1 million locations all over the country, and she did it. But she helped us from the very beginning. She looked and said, where do you ultimately want to go? And then she helped us to be able to build that based off of it. And then the rest is history. But I think back, and it was the little tiny Inchstone. It was that one little thing. It was the interaction with Glenn that changed things. Because had I not met Glenn, or had we kept the VIP on the schedules, most likely I don't have the relationship that I did with Glenn Schaefer, and I don't, we don't have the opportunity to be able to set our company up, as opposed to working through it and then building it and then having to reverse some of the challenges. We built it on a foundation. When Kelly came in, she looked at it and said, this is what you want to do. We're going to set your accounting up. We're going to set your company up based off of where you want to go, as opposed to what you can do now. And so where I want to encourage you is those little Inchstones today that God is giving you. He's giving you opportunities today. He's giving you relationships today. He's doing that. And he's giving you little tiny Inchstones that will become the milestones down the road. But we have to treat the Inchstones with the respect. You see, I had no idea that not treating a person as a VIP would be a foundational building block. Be aware of the Inchstones today. They will be the milestones tomorrow. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in. It's been another episode of Inchstones. If you don't have the workbook, grab the workbook. It's in the link in the bio. I appreciate you more than you know. And my name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting.